You know that strange calm that comes after something intense, when you should feel shattered, but instead there's this quiet knowing. That's not numbness, that's arrival. You've just passed a quantum threshold most people never even notice. The universe didn't test you to punish you. It mirrored you, perfectly, to show you who you've become. Every unanswered message, every moment of silence, every time life withheld what you thought you needed, those were not rejections. They were reflections. They were your old energy bouncing back one last time, asking, "Are you sure you've changed?" And this time, you didn't chase, you didn't collapse, you didn't beg the mirror to show something prettier. You stayed still, you stayed clear. You met your reflection with coherence instead of chaos. That's what it means to pass the test. Not that everything suddenly gets easier, but that your field no longer fractures when reality doesn't rush to please you. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle shift inside, where you're no longer trying to convince the universe but letting it echo your new state back to you. Think of it like this. The mirror doesn't show truth until you stop shaking. Your coherence allows the reflection to stabilize, and when it does, something extraordinary happens. Reality starts to copy you instead of challenge you. But here's what most people miss. Passing the test isn't the end of the game. It's the signal that a new level of reflection has begun, one that's subtler, faster, and even more intimate. Because when the mirror turns quantum, it doesn't just show your face, it shows your future. Here's what's really happening beneath that test. Reality isn't judging you, it's synchronizing with you. Think of the universe as a quantum mirror, not made of glass, but of fields, constantly calibrating itself to the coherence of your nervous system, your thoughts, your micro-emotions. When you move through a trigger without collapsing, the mirror registers a new frequency. It says, they're holding the signal. And once that happens, everything that's still vibrating in the old pattern starts to fall away. That's why it can look like loss, silence, or endings. But it's not punishment, it's physics. Most people misunderstand this part. They think the test was about proving worth. It never was. The mirror doesn't reward or reject. It reflects the exact texture of your internal field. When you feel abandoned, the world echoes back absence. When you anchor safety, the world reorganizes around presence. This is the moment you entered, when your coherence began broadcasting more powerfully than your wounds, and the universe adjusted. That adjustment often feels like everything's glitching, timelines rearranging, people ghosting, plans dissolving. But if you stay with the signal, you start noticing a pattern. What leaves is what no longer resonates, and what remains begins to mirror your new state back with uncanny precision. Notice how even your body knows this. The breath deepens, the pulse slows, the mirror becomes clear again. You are literally stabilizing your reflection. Let's be precise about this mechanism. You are both the observer and the observed. The field around you behaves like a liquid mirror, rippling when your focus scatters, smoothing when your attention rests in coherence. That's why stillness isn't passive, it's creative. Every time you choose not to react from fear, you polish the mirror. And when it's polished, the reflection becomes prophetic. You start glimpsing your next reality not as fantasy, but as feedback. Most people never reach this clarity because they confuse turbulence for failure. They see distortion and panic, when in truth it's just the mirror realigning to their latest state. You didn't make that mistake. You held steady. You passed. But there's a deeper layer to this, one almost no one talks about. Because once the mirror starts to stabilize, something unexpected happens. Your reflection begins to move first. It's as if the future version of you inside the mirror starts signaling before you act, guiding you into decisions you can't logically explain. And that's where the real initiation begins. Let's talk about that moment when the reflection starts moving before you do, because that's where most people panic and sabotage the shift. They think, wait, I'm losing control, I don't recognize myself. But what's really happening is the future self, the one who already lives in coherence, is now leading. You're no longer projecting onto the mirror, you're being invited into it. Here's the myth most people still believe, that manifestation is about controlling the image. They think if they can perfect the vision, repeat enough affirmations, or visualize with enough emotion, the mirror will finally show what they want. But the quantum mirror doesn't respond to desire. It responds to identity. You could stand in front of it saying, "I'm abundant, I'm loved, I'm safe," and still watch your reflection tremble. Because beneath the words, your nervous system is broadcasting doubt. The mirror doesn't care about words. It listens to frequency. Think of it like this. When you look in a real mirror, you can't smile your way out of tension. The reflection doesn't lie. You have to actually relax for the face in the glass to soften. The same rule applies here. Your life can't reflect peace until your body feels safe enough to stop performing it. Let's make it real. Imagine this. You send a message to someone. Maybe it's someone you care about, and they don't reply. The old you spirals, checks the phone, rewrites the narrative, tries to fix the reflection. But the new you pauses. You breathe. You let the silence mirror your steadiness instead of your fear. And suddenly the silence isn't an absence. It's a signal. It's showing you how coherent you've become. That's the secret. You don't manifest by forcing the mirror to change. You align your internal reflection until the outer one has no choice but to match. Every test you've faced recently, the money tension, the waiting, the doubt, has been part of the mirror's final distortion before it clears. Because coherence isn't proven when life feels perfect. It's proven when life feels uncertain, and you stay in frequency anyway. You've crossed that threshold. But here's what changes everything. Once your reflection begins to move first, you start realizing it's not just mirroring your present state. It's showing glimpses of parallel outcomes already unfolding. And that's where timelines start to overlap. When the mirror becomes a portal, not just a reflection. When the mirror turns into a portal, your first task is not to run through it. It's to stabilize your body enough to see clearly what's inside. Because coherence doesn't begin in your mind, it begins in your nervous system. Think of it like this. The quantum mirror can only reflect what's steady. If your internal field is shaking with stress, the reflection warps. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because your body doesn't yet feel safe to hold that level of clarity. That's why every genuine expansion begins with nervous system regulation. Here's the pivot. Safety isn't a luxury. It's the signal the universe responds to. When you anchor safety, you anchor frequency. When your breath slows, the mirror stills. When your heart softens, the reflection brightens. Let's try something small right now. A coherence micro practice. Wherever you are, close your eyes for a moment. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale softly through the mouth for 6. Now, while you do that, imagine your awareness dropping from your head into the center of your chest, not to escape your thoughts, but to meet them from steadiness. Feel that slight warmth spreading. That's coherence, not a thought, a frequency. You see, your nervous system is like the lens of the mirror. If it's fogged with adrenaline, fear, or overthinking, your reflection blurs. But when you settle, the image refocuses. That's why people often get intuitive downloads right after a calm breath, because clarity requires stillness. And it's not about perfection. Even in turbulence, you can practice small recalibrations, putting a hand on your chest when anxiety spikes, slowing your blink rate to signal calm, whispering, "I'm safe now," until the mirror agrees. These gestures may seem tiny, but they're quantum. They alter the charge of your entire field. When you feel safe in your body, the universe reads that as a stable frequency, a coherent broadcast. And that's when reality stops testing and starts responding. You move from being at the mercy of reflection to becoming the steady center of it. But coherence introduces a new challenge, one that almost everyone misinterprets. Because after the mirror clears, you'll start noticing something strange. Moments of expansion followed by sudden dips. Clarity followed by confusion. It's not regression. It's the transition between state and identity. And learning that difference is what separates temporary calm from embodied transformation. Here's where the deeper shift begins. The passage from state to identity. Every glimpse of coherence you felt, that grounded peace, that unshakable stillness, was a preview of who you already are on another level of the mirror. But the key now is to make that frequency your home, not a temporary visit. Most people live as tourists of their higher self. They touch coherence in meditation, in a sunset, in a breakthrough conversation, and then they slip back into survival. That's not failure, that's habit. Your nervous system doesn't yet trust that the calm can last, so it returns to the familiar turbulence it's known for years. But this is where your evolution accelerates. Because the moment you stop chasing a state and begin embodying an identity, the mirror reorganizes completely. Let's be clear. A state is fleeting. It depends on conditions, music, mood, moment. An identity is stable. It reshapes conditions. When you embody coherence as identity, you don't try to hold peace. Peace becomes the baseline frequency you broadcast automatically. Notice how subtle this is. When life triggers you, you can feel the old reflex wanting to panic. But something new overrides it. You breathe, observe, and respond from grounded clarity. That's not a moment of discipline. That's identity taking command. And this is exactly what the universe has been testing. Not if you can reach alignment, but if you can remain aligned when reflection wobbles. Here's the quiet truth. Once your mirror stabilizes at the identity level, reality starts bending around you faster than logic can explain. Synchronicities accelerate, people shift, opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere. But they're not new. They were always in your field. You simply tuned to the version of you who could perceive them. And yet, even in this expanded state, there's a final edge most people meet. The sensation that time itself is folding, that multiple outcomes are flickering before your eyes. You might notice déjà vu, prophetic dreams, or moments where you swear you've lived a scene before. That's not imagination. It's the beginning of timeline recognition. Because once identity locks, your mirror starts showing parallel versions of you, reflections from other coherent possibilities, all inviting you to choose. And the moment you realize that choice is real, you stop being tested and start traveling. Here's the moment everything starts to look surreal, when identity becomes the selector of timelines. Because the quantum mirror doesn't just reflect one future, it reflects every version that matches your frequency. And whichever reflection you emotionally recognize as me, that's the one that solidifies into experience. You can think of it like standing before a hall of mirrors. Each one shows a slightly different you, the version who's still afraid to speak, the one who already leads with calm authority, the one who feels abandoned, the one who's deeply rooted in love. They all exist simultaneously, waiting for your coherence to choose. Identity is the cursor that decides which mirror becomes solid. Every thought, every breath, every micro decision broadcasts to the field. This is who I am now. And the universe answers instantly, matching your declaration with corresponding circumstances. Let's ground this with something ordinary. You wake up one morning and check your account. The balance is lower than you hoped. Old identity flinches, contracts, imagines lack. New identity breathes, remembers abundance as frequency, and moves differently. Maybe you send the email you were avoiding. Maybe you take that inspired action you'd been postponing. The difference isn't the balance itself, it's the identity interpreting it. The reflection reorganizes in response. That's the mechanism no one teaches. Timelines don't choose you. You choose them through emotional recognition. When your body feels safe embodying the version of you who already lives the outcome, the mirror locks onto that timeline like a magnet finding its pole. This is also why rushing never works. When you push, you signal lack of trust, and the mirror flickers between realities, unsure which one to stabilize. But when you remain calm, not pretending calm, being calm, you become the fixed point the field organizes around. It's subtle but seismic. Coherence doesn't chase probabilities, it anchors them. And as you deepen into this awareness, something exquisite unfolds. Your future reflection begins guiding your present actions in real time. You start noticing synchronicities stacking, ideas appearing just when you need them, people crossing your path with perfect timing. It's not luck, it's timeline feedback. You've tuned to the version of you who's already walking that path, and now their reality is echoing back through the mirror. But there's a way to stabilize this connection even more. A daily toolkit to anchor the identity in your body, not just in your mind. And when you practice it consistently, coherence becomes automatic. Now that you understand how identity selects the timeline, let's translate it into something you can actually do every day. A coherence toolkit that keeps your mirror clear and your signal strong. These aren't rituals for control. They're anchors for remembrance, reminders of who you've already become. Tool 1, the grounded breath. Before you check your phone in the morning, place one hand over your heart and one over your lower belly. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and whisper silently, "I'm here." This one phrase calls all fragments of your attention back into the present identity, the one aligned with coherence. You're not rehearsing your power, you're returning to it. Tool 2, mirror dialogue. Each night, look into your reflection, not as vanity, but as communication. Ask softly, "What did you learn about me today?" This isn't to judge or analyze, it's to witness how your energy shaped the day. Sometimes your eyes will show fatigue, sometimes quiet strength. Both are data. The mirror always tells the truth of your frequency. Tool 3, frequency journaling. Instead of listing goals, write sensations. Describe how the timeline you're tuning to feels. Not what you'll have, how your body will feel when you already have it. Warmth, spaciousness, gratitude, that's the real language of the field. The more clearly you can feel it, the faster the reflection stabilizes. Tool 4. Heart coherence pulse. Throughout the day, especially when anxiety spikes, gently tap the center of your chest 3 times. This creates a biofeedback loop that reminds your nervous system, safe, open, present. It's astonishing how quickly this recalibrates the field around you. These micro-practices aren't symbolic, they're mechanical. They polish the mirror every time you perform them. They remind the universe, I'm maintaining coherence even when reflection flickers. And here's the thing, consistency multiplies power. 5 seconds of genuine coherence repeated daily will outpace any forced ritual done in stress. Because what the mirror reads is not duration, it's authenticity. If you're here listening to this transmission, you're already in the 1% who feel the difference between thinking and embodying. So here's your comment ritual, a declaration to anchor your next reflection. Write, I am already living my future. Let the quantum mirror register that statement through you. Because this next stage isn't about chasing your reflection anymore, it's about walking as the one who creates it. But even with this mastery, there are still traps, subtle sabotages that can pull you back into distortion if you're not conscious of them. And understanding those traps is what keeps your coherence unbreakable. Even when your mirror shines clear, there are hidden distortions waiting to test your steadiness, not as punishment, but as calibration. These are the 3 silent sabotages that pull people back into fractured reflection if they go unnoticed. The first is urgency. It feels noble. I have to make this happen now. But urgency is the nervous system's way of saying, I don't trust the mirror to respond. And the moment you project that doubt, the field destabilizes. Everything speeds up and collapses, not because you're off path, but because your signal just shifted from coherence to fear. Remember this, urgency is not momentum, it's distortion. When you feel that rush rise, pause, place a hand on your body, tell yourself, nothing real can be lost. That single sentence realigns your field faster than hours of overthinking. The second sabotage is split signals. It's when your words and your frequency contradict each other. You say, I trust the process, but inside you're bracing for disappointment. You visualize abundance while secretly expecting delay. The quantum mirror can interpret mixed messages. It simply multiplies them. You end up manifesting confusion. That's why honesty with yourself is the highest form of manifestation. Not fake positivity, clarity. Because when your inside matches your outside, reality becomes seamless. The third sabotage is over-control, trying to micromanage the reflection. It's seductive because it feels responsible. I'm being intentional. But control is resistance in disguise. You don't polish a mirror by pressing on the glass, you polish it by steadying your hand. When you release the need to predict, you allow quantum intelligence to reveal options your linear mind couldn't imagine. Each of these traps shares one root, fear of surrender. The fear that if you let go, you'll lose everything you built. But the paradox is, coherence only amplifies when you release control. That's when the field expands and begins to surprise you again. Notice how every test lately has been about these 3 themes: rushing, splitting, gripping. You've met each one differently this time. You breathed instead of panicked. You waited instead of chased. You surrendered instead of forced. That's why your reality has started to shimmer, because the mirror finally trusts your steadiness. Yet there's still a deeper question. How do you keep this coherence alive not just in practice, but in motion? While walking, eating, creating, speaking? How do you turn reflection into rhythm? That's where integration begins. Integration begins the moment you stop trying to be coherent and start living as coherence. Because true manifestation isn't a session, it's a lifestyle frequency, one that threads itself through ordinary moments until it becomes invisible but undeniable. Start with walking. Each step, imagine your foot sending a soft pulse into the ground, a signal of belonging. You're not moving through the world is moving with you. Every vibration of your body reaffirms the statement, I am safe here. This single awareness turns a walk into alignment training. The mirror reflects back smoother paths, lighter interactions, synchronicities that seem too precise to be coincidence. Then there's eating. When you bring awareness to nourishment, not in a performative way, but by actually tasting, smelling, and receiving, you train your nervous system to associate abundance with simplicity. The field doesn't distinguish between big and small abundance. It only recognizes frequency. Gratitude for a single sip of water is the same signal as gratitude for a dream realized. Even conversations are mirrors. Every word carries vibration. Every tone broadcasts coherence or distortion. Next time you speak with someone, listen not just to what you're saying, but to the state from which you're saying it. If you can maintain heart-centered presence even when misunderstood, you're practicing quantum mastery in real time. This is how daily life becomes ceremony. You're no longer seeking signs. You are the sign, broadcasting through every gesture. And here's the quiet magic. The more ordinary you allow coherence to become, the faster extraordinary realities unfold. The universe reads subtle consistency louder than dramatic effort. One aligned action ripples further than 1,000 forced affirmations. Integration doesn't demand perfection. Some days you'll forget, you'll rush, you'll react, you'll feel disconnected. But each time you remember to return to coherence, you strengthen the signal. Every return is exponential. You'll start to notice the mirror responding almost instantly. Traffic easing as you calm your breath. Texts arriving the moment you release attachment. New opportunities aligning the moment you stop controlling outcomes. It's not fantasy, it's feedback. But there's something even greater waiting beyond this daily mastery. Because as you stabilize coherence across the small things, the mirror begins to expand its scope. It starts reflecting you through your relationships, your creativity, your health. Every domain of your existence begins to reconfigure around your new frequency. And that expansion brings a new invitation, one that requires deeper trust than ever before. When coherence expands into every domain of your life, the mirror no longer just reflects situations. It begins sculpting entire realities around your signal. This is the stage where your relationships, creativity, and health start vibrating to your new rhythm. Everything that resonates stays. Everything that doesn't quietly drifts away. Let's start with relationships. They are your most precise mirrors, not punishments, but feedback loops. When someone triggers you, they're showing you where the reflection is still blurred. But lately, you've probably noticed something different. The arguments that once unraveled, you now dissolve faster. You pause before reacting, feel the space between stimulus and response, and choose coherence instead of defense. That pause, that single breath, rewrites timelines. It tells the field, I'm no longer broadcasting from fear, I'm broadcasting from safety. And when you do, the dynamic recalibrates. Either the connection rises to match your new frequency, or it fades out naturally. The same process unfolds in creativity. You no longer try to be inspired. You live in a frequency where inspiration is constant because your nervous system is no longer blocking flow with self-doubt. The mirror of creativity rewards surrender. The moment you stop forcing brilliance, ideas rush through like water through an unclogged pipe. You become a channel instead of a controller. And then there's your body, the most honest mirror of all. Health, energy, vitality. They're not random. They're reflections of coherence. When you treat your body as a partner rather than a project, it begins to communicate more clearly. You'll notice cravings shifting, sleep deepening, intuition sharpening. Because the body isn't trying to sabotage you. It's always mirroring your internal signal. This is the hidden gift of expansion. Life starts syncing itself around your identity. You no longer work on different areas separately. They all become one holographic field responding to the same broadcast, your frequency of coherence. Yet even here, as alignment deepens, there's one final paradox that every awakened creator must face. At a certain point, you realize you're not creating the reflection anymore. The reflection is remembering you. You're not building a future. You're remembering one that already exists and matching its signal. That realization changes everything. It's no longer about control or even alignment. It's about surrender to divine orchestration, where power and peace become the same thing. And that surrender is where your spiritual dimension unfolds next. This is the moment when coherence stops feeling like a skill and starts revealing itself as remembrance, because what you've been calling alignment is actually your natural state, the one you forgot while learning to survive. When the mirror becomes clear enough, you start seeing that every reflection, every test, every detour was orchestrated by something larger, something profoundly intelligent that has been guiding you all along. This is the spiritual dimension of coherence, the paradox where surrender and power become identical. You're no longer manifesting as an act of will. You're allowing the universe to remember itself through you. Think of it like this. The mirror was never separate. You were never on one side, trying to influence the other. You are the mirror, and the image, and the light between them. Every version of you that you've glimpsed, the confident one, the peaceful one, the abundant one, they're all fractals of the same consciousness observing itself through time. The test wasn't whether you could create reality, but whether you could remember that you already were it. When you reach this level, life starts speaking in synchronicities so direct they almost feel audible. A song lyric answers your unspoken question. A stranger repeats a phrase you whispered in meditation. Time itself rearranges so you're exactly where you need to be, even when logic says you shouldn't. That's not magic. That's recognition. The universe mirrors you through meaning. But surrender isn't passive. It's the most active trust there is. The willingness to let divine intelligence move through you without needing to preview the plan. It's saying, I align with what's real, even if I don't yet understand it. And in that moment, your reflection stops lagging. The feedback becomes instant, fluid, luminous. Notice what that feels like. Not the rush of achievement, but the calm certainty that you're exactly where destiny placed you. Because you are. At this stage, manifestation isn't about effort. It's about remembering your wholeness so completely that the external world has no choice but to echo it. You are no longer seeking coherence. You are coherence, embodied and breathing. But there's one final realization left, one that brings everything full circle. Because once you know that you are the mirror, the final question is, how will you choose to reflect the world back now that you've passed the test? That's the closing of the initiation. You've reached the other side of the mirror, not because you forced your way through, but because you became still enough to let it open. The test you thought you were surviving was never meant to break you. It was meant to reveal that you could no longer be broken. Look back for a second. Every silence, every delay, every uncertainty was the mirror asking one sacred question. Will you trust your reflection even when it blurs? And you did. You breathed instead of reacted. You chose coherence instead of collapse. You saw yourself, not as someone waiting to be saved, but as the field itself remembering its power. Now the universe doesn't need to test you anymore, because you've become the frequency it was waiting for. Reality moves differently around you now. Lighter, quicker, more precise. You'll notice that things start arriving with an effortless rhythm. Not because you're lucky, but because your reflection has stabilized into truth. The mirror is clear. You no longer see separation. You see symmetry. You no longer ask, when will it happen? You live as if it already has. And that is the secret threshold only 1% reach. Coherence so complete that time begins to follow you. So as you move forward, remember this. Every reflection is an invitation to stay in frequency. Every delay is a rehearsal for deeper trust. And every moment of peace, even the smallest, reshapes your entire timeline. You didn't just pass the test. You became the one who writes them. If this transmission reached you at the exact moment you needed it, that's no accident. It's the mirror confirming that you've aligned with your next timeline. Write in the comments, I am already living my future. Let the quantum field register your declaration, and watch how fast your reflection begins to move. Because from this moment on, the universe no longer reflects your past. It reflects you, coherent and complete. You passed, and now, the real creation begins.